Hi guys, this is Tunde Thompson, the instructor of the T-Square OET Academy. If you can hear me, please can you drop yes in the chat box? Yeah, Helen Ike Ikafele, I can see you. Are you still in the class? If you're in the class, please drop yes in the chat box. All right, we'll be handling the reading text today, or the reading sub test today. So what we are majorly going to do today is to identify the areas we have difficulty with and then see how we can address these areas. So if you're in the class now and you have any question, you are free to drop your questions in the chat box. As you all know, for the reading test, you will be having 1 hour for the whole reading on that exam day. Yeah. So for the whole reading, you'll be having an hour for the whole reading. And the reading part A will come first. Then reading part B and C will come after reading part A. That means you will be having 2 sessions in reading that very A. The part 1 of the reading will only contain reading part A. And you only have strictly 15 minutes to complete the 20 questions you are going to have there. Then for reading part B and C, they will come together in one as in a question paper, and you will be having 45 minutes to complete both reading part B and part C. Okay, so but one thing you should know about reading is this: not just only reading, both reading and listening. For you to really pass, to score up to 350, which is the cutoff for both doctors and nurses for OET. Maybe you are going for whether it's National Medical Council, General, whether if it is Nursing Medical Council, General Medical Council, or even if you are going for USMLE or you are going for AMC, whatever purpose your test is for, usually the cutoff mark is 350. Now, for you to get up to that 350, you should be aiming nothing less than 30 over 42 in the reading test. And for you to get this 30 over 42, you will really have to work for it. So for both reading and listening, it's always better to try as much as possible to get the part A very well. When I mean getting the part A very well, you have 20 questions in part A, and those questions are very straightforward. If you can pick the options, if you can get those questions, if you just see the answers, you will know that these are the answers. They are not like reading part B and part C, where you have to think seriously to get your answers. No, they are usually very straightforward. Yeah. So, and for you to score very well in your reading test, you will at least be able to score. If you can get 20 over 20, that would be fantastic. But if you can't get 20 over 20, getting anything less than 18 over 20 will make your chances of passing that test very slim, and it will become more difficult for you to pass that test. that exam. If you can actually get 20 over 20, it means you are just looking for only 10 out of the remaining 22 to pass the exam. You see why part A is very important in your reading text. Okay, so what I would really recommend is that you try as much as possible to work on your part A in that reading. The time is very short, as many persons will always complain. Yeah, the time is usually the issue for this part, for this reading. But the fact is this, that the answers are very straightforward, and if you apply the techniques in your reading part A, you should be able to pass or ace that exam very well. Now, what do I usually advise? If you have gone through my tutorials and videos already on reading, I've made a lot of videos and tutorials on how you can actually pass this reading. So today's discussion will be more of question and answers. So if you actually have questions, you start dropping them in the chat box, and I will be picking them one after the other to answer your questions. Now for the reading part A, it can come in two different formats. Well, overall, you usually have 4 texts, and the text, they are labeled text A, text B, text C, and text D. Now, these texts, all of them will focus on just one topic, but will be defining or describing different subtopics under it. Let's say, for instance, the whole text may be talking about diabetes mellitus. In text A may be talking about this definition of diabetes mellitus and the studies done to define this topic. Text B may be talking about the signs and symptoms. Text C may be talking about investigations, and then text D will be talking about the treatment. Yeah. Now, for each of these texts, they are usually what we call a subtitle given to this text. They might give each text a subtitle. Maybe in text A, they will call it definition. Text B, signs and symptoms. Text D, investigations. And text D, treatment. This is one way the reading part A can come. Another format it can come in is that the passages will not be subtitled. There won't be any subtitle for these passages. You just have text A and the text will just start flowing. You will have text B and it will just start flowing. So by just me looking at the text itself, you may not just have a glance and just know what the text will be talking about. You have to read it through to know what the text will be talking about. So it becomes very challenging for some persons in that exam to quickly grab what the text is talking about and able to answer the questions. Yeah, so it becomes difficult. Now, how do you resolve or deal with these two categories? For the first category, is actually very simple. Immediately you are given that text, because immediately just say your time starts now, the clock starts ticking for you, and they are usually very strict. Okay, they are usually very strict with this part of the text, with this part of the test. Yeah, because the focus there is to assess your reading speed. Yeah, so this is not the time for you to start reading. Sit down and start reading the whole text for yourself. Yeah, so this is where you have to apply some tricks and some techniques that will first of all help you to see the answers as fast as possible. Secondly, help you to move very fast and get the right answers. Yeah, so for that reading, this part of the for the first category of the test, because I told you have two types, or 2 types that you might have in reading part A. So for that reading part A, immediately you look at your text A, text B, text C, and text D, and they are titled. Quickly glance through those titles. Okay, as you are just glancing through, you will just note down. Okay, A is talking about the definition of the diabetes. You would have known the general title is talking about diabetes. Okay, A, I'm dealing with signs and definition. B, I'm dealing with signs and symptoms. Text C, the subtest, this part C is talking about the investigations, and D is talking about treatment. Now, this is not the time for you to now start reading each text one after the other. Immediately after going through this, just a quick way, your adrenaline too will also help you to memorize these things very fast. So immediately you memorize it, this will not take you more than 2 minutes or even up to a minute to do that. So the next thing you are going to do now is to move straight to answering the questions. Yeah. So what do I usually advise people to do? What do I usually advise students to do? I usually advise first that you go to the section where you are, because the whole text is grouped into two. The first is for you to like match the passages. If you just read the text, usually the number 1 to number 7, this is what they usually do there. You read from number 1 to number 7 to try and identify where the information is coming from. Okay, while the remaining part is for you to fill in the gaps. So what I usually advise is this: you've not actually read through this text. It will be difficult. It might not be easy. You might spend all your time trying to match all those points. So it's easier for you to struggle from question number 8, trying to get the answers, because let's say you've read question number 8, and that question, you've gone to the question number 8, you've read question number 8, and it appears to you as if the question number 8 will be coming from the part C, which is the investigation. This question looks like the answer will be in the investigation. Then you move to the investigation now to look for the answer. As you are looking for the answer, you are passively reading that part of the test. So you keep on doing that. You read question number 8, you answer. Question number 9, you answer. 10, you answer. Just like that till the end. By the time you get to question number 20, you would have read that test several times, because you'll be looking for answers. So you've read it over and over. Now, answering question number 1 to 7 becomes very easy for you to deal with. So within 1 or 2 minutes, you should be able to answer question number 1 to 7 without even blinking. Yeah, if you so perfected the skill, immediately you just read, let's say you just read question number 1. Definitely this is part A. Definitely this is part C. Definitely this is part B. That's how you just choose those answers and just fill it up. And it's very easy for you to write A, B, C, D. So within 1 or 2 minutes, you should be able to answer that 7 questions. Why is that? Because you've applied a skill that will make it easier for you to answer those questions. So that's what I usually advise. Another thing I also advise, because it becomes very difficult for some persons when they are trying to answer one question and they are finding it difficult to answer, they will keep looking for the answer. Remember, in the exam, you are not trying to get all the answers. That's what you should know. You are not trying to get all the answers. Rather, what you are trying to do in that exam, as much as possible, what you're trying to do in the exam is to try as much as possible to fetch as much marks as possible for you to pass the exam. So if that's the case, any answer that you don't know, just jump that question and move on to the next, just like that. Even if, let's say, in 3 consecutive answers you are not finding it, don't just get discouraged or start having palpitation, because from those 20 questions there will be at least 3 of them that will be difficult for you to get the answers. Both the difficult ones and the simple ones, they all carry equal marks. You are going to just get 1 mark for each question you answer correctly. So if you waste all your time trying to tackle a difficult question, the simpler ones, you will miss it out, and at the end, you will not now answer the simpler ones. You are not able to fetch the required mark that you need, and at the end, you will now fail the exam. Yeah, so the best thing for you to do, any question that you don't just know, keep moving. just keep moving, keep moving. By the time you finish from that question number 8 to 20, you would have mastered everything. You now come back to 1 to 7 and quickly pick those up. Now, you should be very, very meticulous about the spellings of your answer. Unlike in listening, where your spellings don't really matter much, as long as what you've written makes sense and it's close to what you've heard in the audio. In the reading, you are expected to have written the spell whatever word you are answering very well, because that word would have been like that, exactly like that in the text. So there is really no reason why you must fail that particular spelling. Okay, so don't just go and just, maybe you pick an answer, you just spell anything you like, copy the spelling the way it's in the text and try to replicate it there. And don't just waste your time trying to be writing things in capital letter. They are not necessary. It's easier to write in small letters and move on. Okay, so that is it for part A. And the more you do this practice, the more you practice, the better you become. I would really advise, if you practice and you didn't score very well, try to go over it again and see why you didn't score very well before moving forward. Don't be in a haste to start practicing and you are not improving. So if you are practicing and you are not improving, you have to go back to what you've done before and see what really went wrong, and try as much as possible to apply this skill. It might not be easy for you initially, but as you are doing it, the skill become easier. Within 12 to 13 minutes, you should be able to finish those 20 questions. You don't need that 15 minutes, to be honest, is too much for the 20 questions if you actually follow the skills. Yeah. So if you have any question at any given point, please just drop the question in the chat box. So that's for reading part A and part B. Now, for reading part A, sorry. Now coming to paper 2, which will now be your part B and part C. In this part of the test, they are going to give you 45 minutes. This 45 minutes, to be honest, is a very long time. It's a very long time because it's like you have 2 minutes for one question. Yeah, which is quite enough time to answer those questions. But why is it so difficult for people to catch up? Because those questions are very tricky. Yeah, that's where you really need to understand the text for you to pick the answer. If you didn't understand the question at all, it becomes very difficult to pick the answer. Now, what trick do I usually advise here? Because your focus is not just to pass the exam, but your focus is for you to fetch. Your focus is not just to answer all the questions. I meant to say, your goal is to fetch as many marks as possible to pass that exam. So for reading part B and part C, what I usually advise is this, that you start from reading part C. Yeah, that you start from reading part C, because for reading part B, you just have 6 questions, and these 6 questions, you have one text just for one question, another text just for one question, and they are really time consuming. Yeah, so, and it's not guaranteed that you will get 6/6 in that part. So what I really advise or suggest that you do is this, that you try as much as possible to start from reading part C. Yeah, start there from reading part C. Don't bother trying to read the whole questions, the whole paragraphs or the whole text, because the questions are organized paragraph by paragraph, and they don't jump question. If you've answered question number, let's say you've answered question number 7. Yeah, you've answered question number 7, and the question number 7 is coming from paragraph 2. Your question number 8 cannot come from paragraph 1. Your question number 8 can either come from the later part of paragraph 2 or the early part of paragraph 3. So those ones, they are actually arranged sequentially till the end. Yeah, so you don't need to stress yourself to start reading the passages or to start reading the text. What you would just do is to try as much as possible to follow the questions one after the other. So if you pick a particular question, read it, understand it, go to the first, let's say this is the first question you are picking. Definitely you are going to the first paragraph to look for the answer. It's when you don't find the answer in the first paragraph, you move to the next paragraph. But if you've moved to the next paragraph and you were able to see that answer there, the next answer will most likely will not come from first paragraph anymore. Will come from the later part of second paragraph or third paragraph. So you keep answering sequentially until you get to the end, because you will have two texts that very day for part C. So after answering the first text, you go to the second text and also follow it sequentially. Yeah, anyone that you try answering and you are not getting it, just leave it first and keep moving. But most time, if you really understand that question, you will get it. Now, when you get you've read, you understood the question, you should have it in your mind that in those answers, there is the one that will be the answer most of the time. The words in the answers might not be the way it is formed in the text. They would have paraphrased it. Whereas you will see the one that will look like exactly the way it is in the text, but something will make that answer to be the wrong one. These are what they call distractors. You will think it's the answer. Immediately you just see it, your first instinct says this is the answer, and you try to pick it. But that's not, if you now read carefully, you discover that it's actually saying something not right. There is something that made it not right. Maybe in the text, they've said all the symptoms, whereas in your answers, they've said some of the symptoms. But because you've seen symptoms, and that's how it was written in the text, you will just go and grab it. So just remember that those parts can be very tricky. The same thing now applies to part B too. So when you are done with part C, you can now move on to part B. So in that part B, you really take your time. Another thing you can also apply is to apply your negative knocking off of information. If you read and you're not even sure which one is the answer, then look for ones that are not the answers first and try to remove them, and the ones that are the answer will now be left staring at you. So let me give room for questions. If you have any questions, can you drop your question in the chat box, please? Any questions? So some of the questions that some persons have been asking, they will always ask me, should I use a pencil or a pen for this exam? The answer is quite simple. There is no hard and fast rule. You can use either pencil or pen. Anyone that is more convenient for you, you will use. But what I usually advise is that you use pencil, because with pencil, you will be able to strike your answers off. Yeah? Let's say you've shaded for those parts where you have to shade. Let's say you've shaded a wrong option. You'll be able to clean. Now, another thing I just remembered now, I also have to advise you is this. For that reading part A, if you are using pencil and you've written an answer and you think that is not the answer again, don't try to clean. Don't try to erase what you've written, trying to use the eraser to clean off what you've written. As you're using that eraser, cleaning off your clock, your time is ticking. So whether you're using pencil or pen at that point, just use strike once and strike it off and write the next answer there. Do you get? Because time is of the essence in reading part A. So that time you are using to clean. Number one, you are wasting time. You are adding more anxiety. You are adding more anxiety. You are becoming more anxious. So if you just, even if you read an answer and you think it's not it, strike it off. You wrote another one the same spot and you think it's not still the answer, strike it off again and write the next one next to it. Your next, the one you think is the answer next to it. So don't waste your time trying to erase. You waste your time. You just waste your time in that exam. All right, as I'm not getting any questions coming in, this is where we'll call it a night. And I wish you guys the very best. If you still have further questions, the recording will be on the group. You can always ask your question in the comment section, and whenever I have time, I will respond to your questions. I wish you guys the very best. Do have a wonderful night. Bye.